First time in over 40 years, apart from 2020 and 2021 for obvious reasons, I've not been prayed in my scout uniform in either Southborough, Tunbridge Wells or both. And it does feel weird. When I got up this morning and was ironing a different shirt, it just felt really peculiar. Remembrance Sunday and indeed November the 11th have always been really important dates for me. And as I was preparing for this morning's talk, I started to think why that is. It's not that I've been in the military or any of the uniformed organisations serving this country, or personally faced the horrors of war. And I was just trying to think, why does Remembrance Day mean so much to me? I reflected about my great-grandfather's service. He was awarded the military medal for bravery as a rifleman in the First World War. And his medal is framed perfectly at home, and I'm very proud of that. But yet he died when I was very young, and I don't remember him. I don't feel I knew him. I respect his courage, but I really don't think that has any bearing on my beliefs about Remembrance Sunday. So I started to think deeper about it. And I think my feelings really go back to a school trip, like many schools. When I was 13 or 14, third year, year 9, whatever that is in modern language, we went to the battlefields of the First World War. And as teenage boys do, we were running around pretending to shoot people and everything else in the trenches. And it was Hill 62. Anyone that's been there will know that Hill 62 is maintained as a museum, but the trenches are really exactly as they were. And it was one morning, the wind was blowing, the rain was falling horizontally at us, and the trenches were filling up with mud. And there was just a realisation between myself and my friends at that time that we were standing in exactly the same space where just a few decades before us, people of our age weren't playing shooting, they were shooting. They were fighting and dying for their country. They had lied for that honour of going to fight for their country. Another moment, and I'm sure it's familiar with anybody who's been to the battlefields and stood in the Menin Gate at 8 o'clock when they played the last post. I remember as a 13, 14-year-old, that raw emotion. Many of my school friends had found names of their relatives inscribed on the walls of the Menin Gate. And the last post was played, and the silence that followed was the most powerful silence I have ever heard. The hairs, what little I have on my head, stand up as I remember it now. The raw emotion of that event, there wasn't a dry eye in the area. It made just an impression on me that I will never forget. And I think it's that trip that helped shape the importance of Remembrance Sunday to me. It helps me explain to my scouts every year why we attend remembrance services. Every year I hear, "Oh, Brian, do we really have to go? Standing out there, I'm missing a football game. Why do we have to go? I can't remember the war. I don't know anybody that was in the war. Why do we have to parade?" And my answer is always the same. We do it out of respect. But we do it to remember and honour not just those who died or were injured in the world wars, but everyone affected by conflict since. But most importantly, we do it to remember so that we can learn, because it's only by acknowledging the horrors of the past we can help, or we can hope rather, to build a better future. And it's that idea of building our own better future, our personal role in shaping a better world, I want to return to later. In 2018, to mark the centenary of the armistice, the Imperial War Museum released an extraordinary audio recording. It wasn't captured with MP4 players, MP3 players on the front, but during the war, they recorded sound in the trenches, and they used photographic paper and needles recording air pressure and vibrations so they could determine how far the guns were and what direction so they could return fire. And this recording came from November the 11th, 1918. And we're going to just play that clip now. It starts at 10:59 on November the 11th, 1918. Thanks, Graham. Hopefully. Now, when I first heard this track, what struck me was how the guns continued to fire right up to 11 o'clock. We often hear the phrase, the guns fell silent at the 11th hour on the 11th day. But I hadn't really appreciated that it really was the 11th hour of the 11th day. And that clip, 10:59, the guns were firing. But by 11:02, hopefully you heard it, the sound of birdsong had replaced the sound of war. Peace had broken out and nature was rejoicing. And I just think there's a lesson there. There's a lesson in that very clip. There's a lesson to the world today and to our world leaders. That when two sides truly desire peace, it can happen and happen really quickly. Within the space of 3 minutes, it'd gone from gunfire to birdsong. Now, I've said before when I've stood here that English was not my strongest subject at school. You won't be surprised, therefore, that poetry really or rarely made it onto my reading list. But in that same battlefield trip, I discovered the work of Wilfred Owen. Owen had been training for ministry before the war, and he wrote poetry that captured both his faith, but also his struggle to hold on to his faith amidst the horrors that he was witnessing. Lots of people would have read one of his poems, but they just captured me, and I read a lot more. Only 5 of his poems were published during his lifetime. The rest were all shared after his death. Now, arguably one of his most famous poems, and one that most school children who look at World War I would have heard of, is Ducre et de Coramer. It was written in 1917 and not released until 1920, but it was written, it's generally believed that he was in a field hospital suffering from shell shock when he wrote the poem. And the poem describes the horror of a gas attack and ends with these words: "My friend, you will not tell with such high zest to children ardent for some desperate glory, the old lie, ducler et decorum pro patri more. It is sweet and fitting to die for one's country." Now, Owen was a decorated soldier. He was awarded the Military Cross. He was an incredibly brave soldier. But yet he wrestled deeply with the destruction around him. He struggled to understand how the horrors of war fitted with his faith. And in another poem, Exposure, he writes the line, "For the love of God seems dying." Now, commentators on Owen's work kind of fall into 2 camps. Half of them say he lost his faith. He turned his back on his beliefs because he couldn't comprehend how Christ could survive in that setting of war. The other half say he was somebody who was struggling. And they both use this poem of Exposure to justify their stance. But I'm with the group that say he didn't lose his faith, he struggled. He said the love of God seems dying. He doesn't say he's dead. He doesn't say it's not there. To me, he's somebody who is struggling to understand the suffering around them, but still clings to his faith. Somebody who's questioning, but not losing faith. He wrote a letter to the author Osbert Sitwell in 1918, and in this letter he wrote, "For 14 hours yesterday, I was at work teaching Christ to lift his cross by numbers and how to adjust his crown. I see to it that he is dumb and stands to attention before his accusers. With a piece of silver, I buy him every day, and with maps, I make him familiar with the topography of Golgotha." Owen's words still challenge us today. His poetry shows us a Christ not distant or detached, but present. He wrote, "For 14 hours I was at work teaching Christ." He sees Christ in the trenches with him. And that's the truth, isn't it, that we can cling to? That same truth that Wilfred Owen could see, that Christ was with him in the horror and the destruction of the trenches, is the same truth that we cling to in our broken world, that Christ is still with us. We live in this horribly, horribly broken world. We live amid conflict in Ukraine, in the Middle East, in Afghanistan. Even here in our own country, we're seeing increasingly examples of division and hatred, violence and prejudice and fear. And it's affected our own town. this summer, this autumn, as I've walked the leafy streets of dear old Southborough, I see the Union flags and the flags of St George flying from lampposts. And I just can't help but feel a sense of sadness when I see that. Please don't get me wrong, I love our flags. Every week at Scouts, I salute the Union flag, and I've made a promise as a Scout to do my duty to God and to the King. I believe passionately and proud in our flag and our country. But I feel sadness when I see them flown on the lampposts of our town and around the country. Because I was brought up with a saying, I can hear my mum saying it now. It's not what you say, it's not what you do, it's how you say it and how you do it. And when I see those flags, it's not the flags I have an issue with. I love our flag, but it's their purpose. And in my opinion, or in my opinion at least, the current use of our flags flying from lampposts across our town, across our country, is to provoke division and hatred, not pride and unity. Now, I know when I see on Facebook others have different views, and I completely respect their view, but I just can't help seeing past that division and hurt when I see the flags. And we were called to spread love, not fear. But yet, in the midst of this conflict, Christ offers us words of healing. He offers us words of forgiveness and of hope. His resurrection reminds us that death is not the end, and that love, not violence, has the final word. Today's reading tells us of Jesus calling his first disciples, Simon Peter, Andrew, James and John, ordinary fishermen, ordinary people like you and I. They were ordinary fishermen who left their nets to follow him. But yet the shadow of the cross was already looming. John the Baptist had been arrested. And how did Jesus respond to that? How did he respond to the danger that was ahead? He didn't gather an army of fools. Instead, he called a community. One not defined by borders or armies, but by love, sacrifice and peace. So as we hold silence today, remembering the fallen, let it also be a chance to remind us that we are called to be part of that same community of peace. In a world where nationalism and division seem to grow louder, this call to be peacemakers in the love of Christ just feels more urgent than ever before. And I've shared before that when I write a talk, I'm often drawn to a particular song that just keeps playing in my head. As I was writing this song, I just kept going to the familiar words of "Make me a channel of your peace." It's a song that does hold special meaning for me. My mum used to sing it to myself and my brother as a lullaby when we were small. It was one of her favourite songs. We played it here at her funeral. But those words of St. Francis beautifully express the heart of the message today. That each of us, in our own way, can make a difference. It's true we're not going to be able to solve the Middle East crisis, end the war in Ukraine, but yet each of us can bring peace to our homes, to our communities, to our daily interactions. We can be instruments of peace, spreading hope where there is despair, joy where there is sadness, and love where there is hatred. Shortly in our service, we will join millions around the world in observing 2 minutes of silence. We remember, not so that we can forget for the rest of the year, but so that we can renew our commitment to live as peacemakers every day. As we reflect on the sacrifices of the past, may we also look to the future, so that we can play our part in building a future with peace, hope and love as central themes. I'm going to close this talk by playing a video of "Make Me a Channel of Your Peace." The words will appear on the screen. Feel free to join in and sing the song, or simply sit and listen to the words and watch the screens and let the music and the words flow over you. But just let them be our prayer. Lord, make me a channel of your peace. After the video, Dee will come and lead us in our prayers. Thanks, Graham.
Make me a channel of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me bring your love. Where there is injury or pardon, Lord, and where there's doubt, true faith in you. Make me a channel of your peace. Where there's despair in life, let me bring hope. Where there is darkness, only light. And where there's sadness, ever joy. Oh, Master, grant that I may never seek so much to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love with all my soul. Make me a channel of your peace. It is in pardoning that we are pardoned, in giving of ourselves Amen.